Anybody here? Is there comic book makers? Or are you just fans? They're all fans. Do you read comics?
Yeah.
You like comics? Yeah. Really? That's all? That's the amount you like?
So enthusiastic!
Do you like comics?
Yeah.
We're at WonderCon. This is a pretty cool convention. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Woo!
WonderCon. Deep announcement. How much do we like WonderCon? Because I only kind of like it. Just kidding. Sorry, we're recording this for a podcast that's going to go on MakingComics.com, The Gutter Talk, which is an amazing podcast. If you'd like to check it out, it's at MakingComics.com. And the podcast is called Gutter Talk. It's pretty rad. And our podcast voice is not me. It's actually a guy behind this curtain. See, I'm not kidding. We're doing a big reveal, because no one's ever seen his face. Now everybody's going to look at Adam.
Radio face.
Radio face. The appearance of radio. We're getting there. We're getting there.
Is anybody here for Godzilla?
Yeah. Are people here for Godzilla? All right, we're going to talk about Godzilla for the next hour. just to get ready for the Godzilla. So we'll throw in some Godzilla references throughout some Easter eggs or Godzilla eggs.
That does not exist.
Here he is, the podcast guru, Adam Radio face himself. Are we ready, Adam? Yeah. We're recording? Okay. So, hi everybody. Welcome to the Making Comics with the World panel. We are gathered here today to talk about making comics. Some of the Catholics out there just got that. That was so anyway, yeah, we're here to talk about making comics with the world, as the name of the con. We have a great panel of people. I'm Patrick Yerrick. I'm the CEO of MakingComics.com, which is an educational website that teaches people how to make comics for free, which we inherited from this lovely man here, Jason Brubaker. We're going to go down the line and have everybody do a quick introduction and talk about, just give me a sentence or two about why you feel qualified to be on this panel. I feel qualified because I'm the CEO. That's why I'm here.
I'm qualified because I gave it to him.
Yes.
I'm Jason Brubaker. I have a comic called Remind, and currently one called Citra, and I wrote a book called Unnatural Talent, which is about my unnatural talent. No, it's about how making comics is not unnaturally inherited. It's something that I learned. You guys hear me now?
What?
Anyway, making comics is something you got to learn. It's not something natural to people, and that's why I named the book Unnatural Talent. So,
Hey there, I'm Shelly Kubian. I'm part of StoryForge Productions, and we're working on a comic called House on Writer's Block. Why I deserve or am here? I was
Talk
invited,
about stories.
but it wasn't usual.
I'll coach you.
Talk about story.
Well, we're doing some really cool stuff. We're teaching. I'm really bad at talking. That's why I'm here. Everyone feel awkward, so if you do, that's my goal. So I'm Rachel Beck. I'm also here with Making Comics. Making Comics is my desk. I'm here with StoryForge, and what we do is we do multimedia storytelling. We're really interested in how stories affect the way that we see the world, and so we try and tell stories across a variety of media. We do film, we do audio dramas, and we also make comics. Our comic is House on Writer's Block, and it's about a girl who's an amateur writer, and she gets sucked into her own book, and then through a series of events tries to stop the events that she's already written from coming about. So, I myself am a writer, and so I get to play with all the tropes, and it's basically my playground for that. Shelly is our artist, and she's incredible. She draws dinosaurs like you wouldn't believe, and I love dinosaurs. And she is actually what brought about a lot of the characters. We're qualified to be on this panel because we were trying to engage with people all around the world. Because of the visual nature of comics, which we'll get into later, that's what crosses bridges between the cultures, and that's super important in this sort of internet age.
Okay. I may just end up passing this back to you. But I'm Devin Larson. I'm the editor-in-chief of MakingComics.com. And I've kind of got my hands in editing and creating articles for the site and making sure that everything's consistent high quality. So this is the type of stuff I like to talk about. So, okay.
I'm Kevin Cullen. I'm not qualified to be up here. I snuck on this stage, and they didn't know. No, I do the content development and scheduling for MakingComics.com. So everything that you guys see pop up there is the stuff that I say, you're good enough to go up there, you're good enough to go up there, axe that one. And so yeah, I kind of decide sort of the themes, the months that we do, the articles kind of follow the trail. I'm also a writer. I do a lot of prose writing, but I'm working my way into comic books right now. I've got a script for a graphic novel done, and I'm working on becoming an artist. It's something that I'm slowly developing.
My name's Adam Greenfield. I'm the Gutter Talk host. I'm just not about the analyst right now. I think about an answer. I think my qualifications, well, you guys need a voice for one, and number two, I'm willing. I have more time than you guys to go out there and talk to all the people. And unfortunately, we've been able to talk to a lot of people, not just here in the States, but outside of the U.S. And we got to talk to Howard Schmidt, who's in Denmark. So that was really cool. So I guess my qualification is this.
Yeah, you've logged a lot more hours than a lot of us in just talking to comic book artists.
It's a bigger pain than what you guys are doing.
Yeah. This is the first appearance that we've had of MakingComics.com publicly. We just launched in January 1st. My background is actually as a teacher. I did the graphic novel project at High Tech High for 5 years, and then I formed Little Fish Comic Book Studio down in San Diego, California. And then I left there to work on MakingComics.com, and it's pretty exciting stuff. We're trying to revolutionize the world by giving people access worldwide to content and instruction on how to make comic books for free. Think like the Wikipedia for comic book making, and those are our goals. We're not trying to charge anybody anything. We're really just trying to connect artists with that stuff. And I put together this panel, A, so that MakingComics.com could, be like, hey, we exist, that kind of stuff. And B, because these people are very inspirational people to me, and have done a lot of stuff on the internet and with their own projects that have inspired learners and connected learners to content that is very valuable to them. So I'm really thankful they're here. We're going to start with a quick video that I just got done. I started editing at 6 a.m. this morning and finished editing at 7:45 this morning. So it's a very early draft of a video that we put together for MakingComics.com, and we'll start with that. You guys want to see a video? Are you ready for a video?
Abigail, wake up, your bus is leaving soon. And if you miss it, you'll be doomed to stay the day your bus is leaving soon.
Hey everyone.
Hi.
Hi everyone.
Hi WonderCon.
Hey everybody.
Hi.
My name is Adam Greenfield.
My name is Mark Lick.
My name is Marisa Bernizer.
My name is Devin Larson.
I'm Kevin Cullen.
My name is Patrick Gurick.
I am the host of Making Comics Gutter Talk, the podcast edition for the website.
I'm a web developer and designer at VCU Arts in Richmond, Virginia. I'm also a cartoonist and the head developer at MakingComics.com.
I have the privilege of running the newsletter at makingcomics.com, and I also help out with editing site content.
I'm the editor-in-chief of MakingComics.com, and I help to establish the content standards for articles on the site, as well as the guidelines for editors to proofread those articles.
Run the content development and scheduling part of it, makingcomics.com, so I get to choose what comes out when it comes out.
And I am the CEO of MakingComics.com.
I am not an educator, but one thing that I do believe in is knowledge and the power of knowledge, and especially creative knowledge. I think the world is very scientific, and I think having creativity is that good balance. Plus I hate math.
Well, I freaking love comics. I love making them. I love reading them. I've sacrificed a ton to continue making them. They take up a lot of time. I've given up a lot of things so that I can put effort into that. I'm doing all of this stuff. There's that, and I really love encouraging others to make comics.
I'm really a strong advocate of community in comics, so what really appeals to me about making comics is its level of support and its hands-on techniques for creators of really all levels.
I guess the thing that I found the most rewarding about being a part of Making Comics, and especially with the MOOC that's just about to wrap up, is being able to see what information best serves the independent comic creation community out there, because you get a sense that there's a real need for a clear repository of content to teach them, teaching content.
What's really great about this is that not only does MakingComics.com write their own content, but we're also going to be bringing in content from across the web and making kind of a Rolodex of sorts.
I love making comics, and I love teaching comics. After I left Little Fish Studio last summer and joined the MakingComics.com team, I became energized at the idea of connecting with people all over the world, and that's exactly what we've been doing, and that's exactly what has been happening. It's been an amazing experience to go through the process of connecting with so many people worldwide.
Okay, so we mentioned this thing called the MOOC. Does anybody here know what that is? Raise your hand if you're in the in club that knows what a MOOC is. So the MOOC movement is this massive open online course movement. And MakingComics.com just participated in a 4-week long MOOC. These are free classes that you can take online to learn how to do anything that you want to do. A lot of them are studying history. There's not a lot in art instruction, but there is some. And you can literally just go and enroll in these, and it's voluntary participation. This is a map of the students that we just had participate in the MOOC. Up there is a little over 220 different spots of people all over the world. They were registered students of our MOOC. This meant that we were part of a community that was critiquing each other's artwork, making each other's artwork better, and creating just like amazing work. The MOOC was the Get a Grass MOOC, and it was about, you guys want to feel what the MOOC was about? Anybody? Devin?
Yeah, it was basically just about taking the starting idea that most people have that have ever wanted to make comics. They have an idea in their head for their passion project usually. And the MOOC was about taking that concept and actually developing a plan to produce that into an actual comic. So world building and coming up with a pitch and pitch proposal writing.
What was the most exciting thing that you guys did with the MOOC? Devin, Kevin, jump in.
The participation by everybody. I mean, we had over 200 something by the end of it. Different people from all over the world that were participating, and everybody had a completely different idea. I sort of expected a lot of just kind of copycat ideas that would be like just about a costume swap of like whatever the popular superhero is, and they were all pretty much completely different, and some of them were amazing.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were just, I want to see those comics because they don't exist on the market right now.
One of the things that I really dug about the MOOCs was that every Wednesday we did a Google Hangout with some like professionals in the industry. So I mean, we had Mark Wade on there, we had Jim Zub on there, and we just all sat around. There were like 8 people in this thing, 8 professionals. Ulysses Farinas was in there, and we all just talked about making comics. We didn't sit around and talk about like the fanfare around it, but we talked about the techniques that go into it and the stuff that you don't really get from these professionals anywhere else. A lot of interviews out there, because I try to run some like email interviews and stuff with some of these guys, and a lot of the interviews out there that I've read kind of deal with, oh, so Daredevil's going to do what next season? And Mark Wade's like, you know. But when you get into it and you talk to him about the techniques of writing, like, oh, how do you like design, like how do you think about the architecture that's in the scene? How do you think about, you know, where do you draw your ideas from? That kind of stuff. You see these professionals get actually really fired up to kind of talk about their techniques and the processes that go into them. And so you get a lot of really, really useful information out of that.
Yeah, and like we said, this stuff's available online for free, and we urge you to take a look at the website and tell your friends. If you know people who are like learning to make comics, to take a look at that stuff. Not just our stuff, but Jason's stuff and StoryForge Productions stuff as well. There seems to be a Web 3.0 coming down the pipeline, and that's what I've been calling it. And what it is not, when we saw Web 2.0, which is what we're currently in, it was a lot of great repositories of information, but not a lot of guidance on how to get to everything. And everybody knows who's here that when you jump on a Twitter feed, it can be overwhelming. When you go to Wikipedia, try and figure out where to start, it can be overwhelming. And what we're trying to do, and this is what we're calling Web 3.0, is we're creating a way to guide you through learning and connect you to other people who are learning the things that you're doing. And we're trying to do that for free. And we've only been around for, what is this, 4 months?
This would be month number 4. Yes.
This would be month number 4. So we're doing pretty good, I would say, you know. But I just get to say that about myself. All right, so we'll get into questions in a bit. But first, we have Jason Brubaker. Yeah, sure. Or you want me to tell me?
So when I first started making comics, I was when I first started making comics, specifically my graphic novel, this was like in 2009, and I had no idea that the world would contribute so much to the success of it. And so I put WW Webcomics, Worldwide Webcomics, because once you put your stuff online, everybody can see it and contribute and comment. And as you can see on my newest webcomics on Citra, there's a little section of the comments, and people are like saying, hey, why don't you try this? I don't think this works, and that works. And it really allows you to see what doesn't work, what's broken with your story, what's broken with your storytelling. And the comments also influence how the book goes. Like there's a lot of stuff in Remind that I added after the fact for the print edition because of comments and from around the world. We can go on to the next one. And then the biggest surprise for me was the funding from around the world. This is my second Kickstarter, which raised $107,000, which still kind of blows my mind. The first one raised $12,000 for the first volume, and this is people all the way around the world. I like to joke that I have a comic in hell because I sent one to a city called Hell. I think it's Margaret. I don't know where it is, but Michigan. So that was an amazing surprise to me, and a majority of it is in the United States, but it's around the world that people are contributing and building what it is that we're creating. A new thing that kind of started now is this thing called Patreon, which is kind of, Kickstarter is about making money to fund a physical product, to make hats and to make bags and comics and stuff like that. Patreon has been this interesting site that allows you to kind of get a salary for doing the thing you love to do for free, assuming that people want to encourage you to do it for free. They can become a patron and say, I'll give you $1 a month, or I'll give you $1 every time you do an update. And that's been a pleasant surprise. I started it a couple months ago, and every time I do an update, I get $272 that supporters are giving me to encourage me, pat me on the back every time I do something. And this is, again, on Patreon. People who support can see behind the scenes and influence how the story is molded and what works and what doesn't work. I show them my thumbnails and everything, and give them Q&As, behind the scenes videos, Q&As, and all that stuff. And so it's a real great way to connect with the audience, again, around the world. And this is a real interesting thing that happened. When I put Remind online, a lot of people were translating it for free around the world. And this lady translated the whole book, both volumes, into German. And she even tried to shop it around to publishers, of course, with my blessing. And I was just like, yeah, sure, you can find a German publisher. So she pitched it around, and finally she was like, I just said, hey, you want to do a Kickstarter, and you run the campaign. If it works, then you can print the book and have a German translation that you publish. And so she put together this Kickstarter campaign for the German translation of Remind, and it's a fully fan-funded, fan-built translation, which I don't know if I've ever heard of that before, but then again, I haven't done a lot of research on it. But this has been the most interesting turn of events with how the world is influencing my making comics.
Yeah, and I just want to mention that Jason did form MakingComics.com back when we were working on Remind, right?
It was just, me trying to share everything I'm learning. I was really excited about everything, every step I was learning, and so I was just writing articles and going for it.
Well, and I don't know if a lot of you guys know, but way back when comic books were first, for the last, 60, 70 years of comic book making, it's been kind of one-sided or two-sided. You're a consumer or you're a creator. And what we're seeing now on the internet is there's a huge base of people that are looking and thirsty for figuring out how to make their own stories. And I think Jason kind of tapped into that when he was working on Remind. And that's, MakingComics.com kind of born out of that. And it's really exciting because you're just seeing people hungry for knowledge who are just starting out, and they're having the ability to connect to people where that's never happened really before the last, I want to say maybe 6 to 10 years. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I don't even know how to get into comics if it was 10 years ago. I'm 20 years ago maybe.
Yeah.
I'd be clueless. I mean, it was like this pipe dream that you just kind of got lucky.
Even going back to the $107,000 Kickstarter campaign for Remind that you did last year, all of a sudden you don't have to go the mainstream routes, right? I think Kickstarter was named the #2 publisher of comic books. This was a year ago the article was published. I don't know what the stats are now, but last year it was named for 2012 as the #2. It beat out DC Comics for publishing comic books. So you don't. One of the things that we're seeing is this rise of the do-it-yourselfer. Needing to start thinking about how do we teach people, because part of our audience base wants behind the scenes. That's kind of why I asked you guys to be up here, StoryForge and Jason, because Jason does a lot of teaching the people who support him. He does a lot of teaching them how comics are made as a part of his process. He's not just releasing a comic book, bringing it to a comic book store and being like, ta-da! There's almost a narrative that people are involved in.
But also, in putting it out there and showing people what I've learned, they also show me things. People suggested that I use Kickstarter. People suggested I use all kinds of different things when I was making my books. So it wouldn't be the same quality if it wasn't for me sharing it and showing people how I'm doing what I'm doing.
Well, and that brings us to our next group, StoryForge Productions. And you guys are going to talk to us a little bit about how your business model has included that educational aspect to it, and actually started that way, right? Yeah, so you just tell me. Yeah.
All right, so like I said, our comic is, StoryForge current comic is House on Writer's Block. It's about a amateur writer who gets sucked into her own world, into her own book, and then has to try and prevent the events that she's already written from happening. Part of the reason that we chose to make this a comic instead of a novel, which would normally make sense, is because comics are such a visual thing that they connect across cultures and across worlds. So for myself, even though I'm a native English speaker, I actually grew up in Europe, and in Belgium, when I was attending school, the way I learned to read French and begin to understand the language was largely through comics in a lot of ways. Because, so some of you, some of them have made it over here. Asterix is a Belgian comic, Tintin, I think the Smurfs, they made it over here, didn't they? The Yakai, which is my favorite, that nobody's ever heard of. And so by reading along, because it's this beautiful mix of story and imagery, you can travel through it at your own pace, and it makes this wonderful bridge between cultures. As the world becomes more interconnected through the internet, it becomes increasingly important for us to start to share stories of our worlds. The reason for this is that stories have this really interesting phenomenon where whenever you tell a story, the listener must look through the main character's eyes. It's this really interesting thing that our brain does, where whenever we hear a story, we immediately put ourselves in the shoes of whoever is doing the actions in the story to check to see if their actions make sense in the context of the world they're in. Because of this, it's this really tricky way of getting us to look beyond ourselves for just a second and see the world in different spaces. And this makes it this wonderful way to bridge cultures, to experience new things from a distance in a very pleasant, sharing sort of way. Go ahead. No, I'll let you read that quote yourself. But you, throughout this, so like there's Persepolis has become one of the big comics that's crossing bridges. Mouse, that was a big shaker. Even like the recent Miss Marvel comic is doing this big move to bridge cultures. All right. Because of the tremendous power of stories at StoryForge Productions, we think that we have a responsibility to tell good stories. Not just entertaining stories, not just engaging stories, but stories that reflect something true about the world. Because whenever you're putting somebody in the place where they are looking through another character's eyes, you're making some sort of assertion about the way the world is or the way the world should be. The story that we're telling with House on Writer's Block is essentially you are responsible for the stories you tell.
Alright, so as we were saying with good stories that we want to tell, three things that we think are important to that is that stories have something true in them, that they are relatable in some way, and that they connect with the world. With House on Writer's Block, the true thing we are saying is what you just said, is that we're responsible for the stories that we tell. As far as relatable, I think it's very true of our generation that the friends that we find around us are sometimes our closest family. And that's a big part of our comic is all of these people from different families, from different races, from different stories who come together and form a family in this one house. And for relating to the world, I forgot what I was going to say there for a second. Just gone. We feel like artists, as an artist, I sometimes get caught up, we get caught up in our imperfections, and we want to make the perfect art. But a good story is something that you share with people. And we think that that's why we want to get these stories out, is because, I forgot what I was going to say again, is that real artists give to the world and give back.
So a random Godzilla fact is that Godzilla was first appeared in Ishiro Honda's 1954 film, but I'm guessing you already knew that, right? Who just learned that for the first time? Don't be shy, because I just did. from my smartphone. Talk about interconnected. Oh, I just
Should we
pulled
stick
right
around
back.
for the next panel?
Huh?
Should we stick around for the next panel?
The next panel, yes, we should. I kind of want to have a quick talk. Where are we at? We're at 4:33. We have roughly 20 minutes. I'm going to open it up to audience questions in a little while. I want people to think of questions. Your homework right now, while you're not listening to us, is to think of questions for us. But listen to us at the same time. I'm just kidding about the not listening part. All right, so I really want to open up to a discussion, and we can just hop in. I want to talk about what's happening. What are we seeing? Because between all of us, we're spending so much time online these days that we're probably, I don't know. Let me ask the audience. I'm going to do an audience poll question really quick. How many people spend 3 hours a day online? Whoa. How about 5? Okay, so how about 1? Anybody? Just 1 hour a day? How about 10 hours a day online? 11? 23.
I'm just making everybody feel bad.
I don't exactly keep track, but I'm online right now.
You sleep with my phone. All right. So, no, I mean, the thing that is going on is that we're seeing. I've assembled this panel because MakingComics.com. I can speak very largely about it, but what we've been able to do in 4 months has been nothing short of astounding. And I spent 2 years working on the same thing with a business that I started in San Diego, California. And so the idea of growing, I want to say patronage or a following or having a pulse or an idea of what's going on, I want to open this conversation up to what do we see that's happening and what does that mean for our future. So feel free to jump, Devin, you want to?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this while you're talking. I come from an art background primarily, even though I do editing and writing a lot. And I think as artists, everybody has something to contribute. Everybody might know a little bit of information that all collectively adds up to the whole picture of like how art works. And so I think the most important thing that we've been doing sort of as a business is connecting our audience through the MOOC. I think is really, people have have written articles and tutorials before, but I think that's what we're doing that's remarkable because you get enough people that know a little bit talking together and sharing that information, and then everybody improves.
So again, the question is, what are we seeing and how is it shaping the future? Just general reiterating, but you can go.
I think one of the things that I've noticed is I get a lot of feedback, but I get feedback from the podcast. And a lot of it is I didn't know I could do that. And I think what's happening is that as all of this information is spread out there, people are able to be more well-rounded in their art and craft. And I think that's what stands out to me the most, is that these people are able to expand themselves a bit. And that's good, I think, not just for comics, but just for art in general.
It's interesting because we're all kind of pioneering some educational platforms, right? And I think one of the things that I've noticed, and I don't know, how many trolls are you dealing with? How many people are negative are you dealing with? I think it's an important question. In MakingComics.com, I'm kind of the social media guy, but and Evan's there too. He deals with it. He's in the audience somewhere. How much are we dealing with across the board? Okay? Are you guys dealing with, policing weirdos out of the?
Everybody loves the podcast.
Everybody loves the podcast. Like nobody hates it, right?
I actually haven't heard anybody say that guy was wrong, or attack any guest or even questions that were had. So I guess I've been fortunate.
Well, and I think the thing that we've been fortunate in general about is just everybody that's coming to make use of our resources and hopefully in the future meet up and collaborate. They're there because they want to be there. So we haven't really dealt with too much in the way of like haters or anything.
How about you guys? I don't know about your state, so any problems?
Not too much. I mean, people correct my spelling sometimes, so that's annoying. But mostly.
But beneficial, right? For housing writers.
What I've found that actually goes back to your original question, what are we seeing, is a lot of what I'm seeing is people discovering that they have the same love of things, which is very similar to what WonderCon's all about, right? We're a bunch of nerds and we all get together and geek out about the things that we really love, and suddenly we realize we're not alone. That's the biggest thing I've seen in terms of this comic making thing. So no, we don't get a lot of trolls. We get people suddenly discovering that they have a ton of like ready-made friends out there.
How about you, Jason?
I've had a couple trolls in the past, but they told me they would never come back, so I don't. But I think as far as your question goes, of where we see the comics going, is I've been noticing that, you know, with the giant corporations churning out this media and stuff, it's kind of all processed and generated to please the masses. But what we can do, all of us, is we can remove the masks and not give people what we think they want, but give them what is really true in our hearts. And I think that's so important to building something that's meaningful, that actually can change the world, versus just, oh, giant robots work, everyone buys them, so let's make a giant robot film. You know,
just so enabling everybody.
But it's okay for a giant lizard film. Just
but yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I recently went viral. Some people in the audience know this, and some people up here know this. But last fall, I went through this.
Show your own.
I have this tattoo of a comic strip on my arm, and I started taking pictures of it. I got it as a Groupon. Like, it was a thing. I started posting pictures of it. It kind of got connected to a lot of media stuff overseas, mostly. Like, I was interviewed in India and South Africa, and Netherlands. I had to print up write-ups in the Netherlands. That was pretty cool. But like, what was weird about it, and this is the big thing, it was so different than what all of us are doing. Because what was weird about it was, all of a sudden these things went live. I was in Huffington Post, I was on CNET, and those were the trolls. Those were all the people who were like, and I would go, and I would read them every day for like 30 days. So I was just like, oh my God, this is so weird and exciting. And then all of a sudden, it was like, what a hack. I mean, people didn't even look at what I was producing as an art teacher, or the projects that I was working on elsewhere on the web, and that this was a $50 Groupon in an afternoon where I was joking around. You know, like, they just judged that thing. And what's being done differently at all of these platforms is we're like gatekeepers. Like, we're saying, this is what this is about, and if you don't like it, go somewhere else. And I think that that's the difference. I think that's honestly the difference, and that's where Seth Godin talks about in this book called Tribes, where we're assembling these tribes of people that are really interested in the things that we're doing. And we're saying, this is how you be in the tribe. If you don't like it, go somewhere else. Go find your own tribe. Where the industrial model was, we have a tribe and it's called NBC, or ABC, or CBS, or PBS, which had a much smaller viewership. Yeah, I think we're entering this whole new phase. What do you want to add to this?
I just wanted to add, like, bring up the idea of tribes. I think what's so cool, and kind of to tie back to the idea of the panel is making comics with the world. I think what's so cool is that because it's a website and because it's free to everyone, these tribes that we're creating are literally worldwide. I mean, we've got people in Africa, people in India, like people who aren't from a comic-based community. They're able to come to MakingComics.com and they're able to connect with the people who are from Making Comics communities, who are from communities that do value art, that do value storytelling. And I think that that's what's so powerful about kind of the work that we're doing, is because we're giving these people who, in their own communities, would probably feel ostracized, we're giving them an outlet, a creative outlet, and an outlet that is fulfilling, and it's what's the word I'm looking for? Braces them. Uplifting. Yeah. And you know, it really, it's reassuring to them, and we're seeing a lot of positive feedback. Like he was saying, we haven't gotten really any like trolls on there, because the people who are coming here are people who are looking for this outlet. They're people who are from Germany, from the UK, who live in these little rural towns, who have no access to you know, big art colleges. They're coming to MakingComics.com and they're starting their dreams here, and I think that that's what's so cool. Just meeting these people.
And just to piggyback off of that, because they're coming from all over the world, they're coming from oftentimes different cultures and have different stories to tell that aren't being told because everything follows like a certain rule. That's
very Eurocentric kind of.
Sort of what Kevin was saying also is that I feel like what's so great about Making Comics and StoryForge also is that we're producing the sort of content that we wish we had access to when we were growing up. I'm so excited to see all like the surplus of comic artists coming out. Like, super excited.
That was the end of my battery power. But yeah, let's open it up to questions. I want to hear some good ones coming out.
What would you say would be like the author responsibility for their product? You know, that I've seen many webcomics where somebody started something and then they dropped off, and there's all these people just sitting there waiting. You know.
So the question was, what is the author's responsibility towards the work that the audience?
Yeah,
the audience. What's their responsibility towards the story in the audience that they're creating their work for?
I think it's just not to be fake. Just be who you are. I spill water all over the place because of that.
Somebody will clean that up for you.
Because
that's not your responsibility.
And yeah, just be honest and real with what you want to do and what you want to say. And you know, if you're going to take a break, say you're going to take a break. You know?
I think it's kind of a twofold thing as well. It's like a symbiotic relationship. You kind of need the support of the audience as well. Because if you're just making a webcomic and nobody is saying anything on your comments, on your webcomics, or if nobody's pressing the like button, it's easy to get kind of discouraged with that. So if you are somebody who's reading the webcomics and you want the creators to keep creating, it's really important to give them the positive feedback that'll like enhance their experience, like putting their creative juices to work. So
we have 5 minutes remaining. If anybody has questions.
I think really quick, I just want to
go ahead.
And I'm going to steal this from Rachel, StoryForgers. Tell good stories. Like, I think that is your responsibility as an author, is to make sure that you are telling the story the right way. There are many ways to tell a story. Most of them are wrong. So find the right way. Tell it that way.
Good question over here.
Do you make a profit?
Do we make a profit?
Right.
I will.
Do you have a business model is what I'm saying? Or is it for intellectual knowledge? Or is it a business model that you're using?
You directing that at Making Comics?
I'm just curious.
Or you, general question?
A general question,
Okay.
because I listen to how artists feel that they should have total control over their projects and how everything should be done the way that they want. But I'm just curious, is there I mean, you have, at the end of the day, you have to produce something so that A, you make a living, B, you get out of your parents' house and live on your own.
I only live with my parents.
Well,
I will never live anywhere else. No.
I'm just curious on, I mean, if I were younger and I had the internet, yes, I probably would not want to work like I did 30 years a job doing it.
So, to answer your question, I think it's different for everybody sitting up here. MakingComics.com is forming as a nonprofit. We're going after funding so that we can get art education into classrooms that don't have access to it worldwide. We're setting ourselves up to do that. I have a history with grants and education, so we're running on a nonprofit educational grant model. That's our business.
Do you draw a salary?
Yeah, it's a nonprofit.
So,
not yet though. I
no,
haven't made any money off of this yet.
I'm just curious when you say a non-profit, but you're drawing
nonprofits. I worked for a nonprofit high school for the last 6 years, and of course, nonprofits don't mean that you don't draw a salary. I mean, you have to make a living in order to do what you're doing, as you said. Jason has a different business model, so does StoryForge. Do you want to explain what that is?
I work at DreamWorks for a living, and then I do my own thing to, feel content with my life.
We're also for-profit in that same sense. Part of the tension that you're getting at is whether or not you're making something that will sell or whether or not you're making something that's art. And I think that that's also part of this 3.0 web that you're talking about that's coming about. Especially Generation Y is increasingly breaking into these smaller tribes where they're less willing to pay for anything that seems mainstream. It's on the internet, therefore it should be free. But the flip side of that most people don't recognize is that when they find their niche, when they find their tribe, they will pour their resources into that tribe. So you run the gamut. You can go work for DC, and then they have a right to tell you what to do because they're paying your salary. They have a right to influence your art. If you're going to go as an indie comic maker, that's also your prerogative to do whatever you want and build a tribe around that or find your tribe. Odds are you're not the only person that ever had this one love or this one idea or thought this one thing was awesome. How many billion people are there on this planet? Just go find the other people like you, and we're finding increasingly that you can support yourself on that. It's not a get-rich-quick thing by any means, but it is a means
Is there
of
anything in
support.
ours that's a get-rich-quick thing? Does anybody know? This Godzilla thing seems to be a really big boon to the get-rich-quick thing. I don't know. I'm just throwing Godzilla out there.
Patreon actually.
Get ready.
I think Patreon's actually a really good example.
How much time do we got? One, two, one more question. One question, quick answer. Who wants this question the most? I think you had your hand up on it.
I just wanted to know, since you're gleaning stories from around the world, what types of stories are you getting? Are you getting stories about students participating in revolutions? Are you getting war stories? Like, how do you help people develop those stories that you're seeing?
We just got our final pitches in. So the question was, what kind of stories are we getting? I can tell you from our MOOC, we just got our pitches in for a comic, and I got one of the standout ones was about a family of guitar-headed people. They were fighting crime, fighting commercialism of rock and roll on the streets of Detroit. This was one of my favorites. Chris Warnoff, I think was his name. And then we had another one called Kid Logic out of Virginia, which was, actually it was called 50 Dumb Things That I Did When I Was a Kid. They looked really promising. Any of the other ones stand out to you?
I still have to watch a lot of the final videos, but
pitches.
Not as many autobiographical ones, at least that I saw, as I would expect. Either they tend to be weird like that, or but they run the gamut. There's a lot of really ambitious people that desperately want to make a sci-fi, like hard sci-fi space comic.
I think at the end of the day, comics are an escapist medium, and you tend to, even the one that I pitched for the course was autobiographical somewhat. It was also told like 100 years in the future, so we're seeing a lot of people come to comic books because they want to escape. I think autobiography, honestly, I just wrote my first autobiographical story, and it is like one of the hardest things that you're ever going to do. I think, but that's just me. I think we're wrapping up now, too. And I think this has been an amazing panel. Godzilla is next, right? We talk outside. You can talk to us outside for a minute, and I'm going to the Thrillnet panel though down the thing. So come see me on that panel there. For the rest of you, thank you so much. Let's give our panel. Productions.com and that is StoryForgeProductions.com. Please check out MakingComics.com for any and all of your Making Comics needs. And of course, check out Citra.com as well as RemindBlog.com. You have a Natural Talents available through Remind, right?
On Amazon.
On Amazon.
Whoever wants this can have it. So.
Unsanctioned audience giveaway.
It's really good.
On the way out.
It's really good. That's Michael.